With everything you're hearing right now, interest rates, market shifts, price cuts, headlines, social media experts, it would be completely reasonable to ask, are homes even selling right now? And honestly, that's one of the biggest questions we hear from homeowners right here in Volusia County. Because if you're even thinking about making a move, that question sits in the back of your mind. You're wondering, is now a terrible time? Are buyers even out there? If we listed, would anything actually happen? And if you've had those thoughts, you're not overthinking it. You're asking the exact right questions. So let's talk about what's actually happening right now. Not what the headlines are saying, not what your neighbor's cousin said on Facebook. What's really going on in today's market, especially right here in Volusia County? I think once you understand this, it takes a lot of fear out of the decision. Because here's the truth. A lot of homeowners are stuck right now, not because they don't want to move, but because they're confused. And honestly, I get it. One day you hear the market's crashing. The next day you hear there's no inventory. The next day you hear rates are too high. Then someone else says homes are still getting multiple offers. After a while you throw up your hands and you think, what is actually true? And that's the problem. There's too much noise. And when there's too much noise, people stop making clear decisions. So in this video, I want to simplify this. I'm going to walk you through whether homes are actually selling right now, what's changed from the crazy market a few years ago, and what sellers need to understand today, and why this market is actually not as scary as a lot of people think. I'll keep it real, simple, and local, because real estate is not national headlines. It's hyper-local. And if you live here in Volusia County, that matters. So let's answer the big question first. Are homes even selling right now? Yes, absolutely. Homes are selling every single day. And that's important to say clearly, because a lot of people are walking around with this idea that the market somehow just stopped. It didn't. What changed is not that homes stopped selling. What changed is that the market became more normal. That's the shift. A few years ago, the market was operating in a way that honestly wasn't sustainable. Homes were flying off the market in a day or two. People were waiving inspections. Buyers were throwing offers at houses they barely had time to think about. That's not normal. That was a very unusual situation. I think that's where a lot of confusion comes from right now, because people are comparing today's market to the most aggressive, unrealistic version of the market we've seen in years. And when you compare today to that, well, of course it feels slower, but slower does not mean dead. And that distinction is everything. And here's what I think is really interesting. When most homeowners ask, are homes even selling right now? What they're really asking is not, are homes selling? What they're really asking is, would my home sell right now? That's the real question they want answered. Because you're not trying to analyze the entire market. You're trying to understand whether your specific home in your specific neighborhood in this specific season would still attract a buyer. And the answer is very often yes. But here's the key. The homes that are selling right now are the homes that are positioned correctly. And that's what matters now. This is no longer the kind of market where you just throw a sign in the yard, you upload a few photos, and assume the house is going to sell itself. Buyers are still active, but they're more thoughtful, more selective. They're more comparison driven, and honestly, that makes more sense. Because when buyers have more options and more time, they're going to make more intentional decisions. And that means sellers need to be more intentional too. Not dramatic, not panicked, just strategic. And that's actually a much healthier market. So let's talk about what's actually different right now. Because if you're thinking about selling, this part really matters. And what's changed in today's market? Well, a few big things actually. Number one, buyers are still there, but they're not running around like they used to. That's probably the biggest difference. Buyers are still moving for the same life reasons they always have been. Downsizing, upsizing, job changes, family changes, lifestyle shifts, wanting to be closer to kids or grandkids, wanting less maintenance and needing a different fit. Those motivations didn't disappear. Life still happens, people still need to move. But what changed is this: they're not making panic decisions anymore. And honestly, that's not a bad thing. It just means they're taking more time. They're comparing more homes, they're paying more attention to condition. They're noticing deals. They're asking more questions. And if you're a seller, that's not something to fear. That's just something you prepare for. Now, number two, presentation matters more now than a few years back. A few years back, buyers were willing to overlook a lot. I mean, now, not as much. If a home feels cluttered, dated, neglected, or overpriced for what it is, buyers are going to notice. And more importantly, they're going to keep scrolling. And that's why today, presentation matters more than ever. Not because your house needs to be more perfect, mind you, but because buyers are evaluating more carefully now. And if your home shows well, feels clean, and is positioned the right way, it absolutely can still stand out. And number three, strategy matters more than hype. And this is a big one. A lot of sellers still have this mindset of, well, homes were selling like crazy a couple years ago, so ours should too. I get that, but that's not how the market works anymore. This market rewards strategy, not assumptions, not outdated expectations, not let's just see what happens. And the sellers who understand that are the ones who are having much better experiences right now. Now let's talk about the part that messes people up the most, the headlines. Because if all you consume is national real estate news, you'll probably think the housing market is either totally frozen, completely collapsing, or somehow it's doing both at the same time. And that's because headlines are designed to get your attention. They're not there to help you necessarily make good local decisions. And that's why Cindy and I always say real estate is local. In fact, it's hyper-local. What's happening nationally does not always reflect what's happening in the county, in the city, or even just your neighborhood. And that's especially true in Volusia County. Because local demand, local inventory, local lifestyle appeal, and local buyer behavior, that's all that matters. That's why broad national headlines can actually create a lot of unnecessary fear. And when people are afraid, they freeze, they delay, they wait for perfect. And usually that just keeps them stuck longer than they need to be. And I'm not saying people should rush. I'm saying they should make decisions based on reality, not noise. And that's the difference. So if are homes even selling right now isn't really the most helpful question, what should sellers actually be asking? Well, here are the better questions. If I list and my home sells, what am I going to be competing against right now? And that's a smart question because your home does not sell in a vacuum. It sells in comparison. What are buyers seeing alongside your home? What options do they have? What makes your home stand out or not stand out? Now, that's a much more useful conversation than is the market good or bad. Number two, what would a buyer likely notice about my home today? And this is a great question. Sellers naturally stop seeing their home the way buyers see it. That's normal. You live there every day. But buyers are seeing it with fresh eyes. In this market, that first impression matters a lot. So the real question becomes, would your home feel move-in ready? Well maintained? Is it inviting? Is it worth a second look? Now that matters more than it did in the frenzy years. Now number three, if I made a move, what would that actually allow me to do next? Now this one's huge because for a lot of people, the market question is really a lifestyle question in disguise. They're not just wondering if homes are selling, they're wondering, could we simplify? Could we move closer to family? Can we get rid of those stairs? Could we reduce maintenance? Could we finally make the move we've been putting off? And those are really important questions because sometimes the best time to move isn't about the perfect market. It's about the right season of life, and that's worth paying attention to. And this is where I think a lot of homeowners are missing the bigger picture because yes, today's market is different. But different doesn't mean bad. In fact, in a lot of ways, this market actually gives sellers something they did not have a few years ago. More clarity, more room to think, more ability to make a move with a plan instead of a panic. Because a few years ago, yes, homes sold incredibly fast. But a lot of people were stressed out of their minds. They had to make snap decisions. They had no time to breathe. They felt rushed on both the selling side and the buying side. And now things are more balanced. For a lot of homeowners, especially downsizers, that's actually a huge advantage. Because if you're making a major life transition, you do not want chaos. You want clarity. You want a strategy. You want enough breathing room to make good decisions. And today's market can actually offer you that if you approach it the right way. That's why I don't think the right takeaway right now is, should I be scared to sell? I think the better takeaway is, if I'm considering a move, how do I do it smart? That's the conversation worth having. So, are homes even selling right now? Yes, absolutely. But maybe the better question is, would your home sell well right now if it were positioned the right way? That's a much more useful conversation. Because if you've been sitting on the fence wondering whether the market has somehow shut down, well, it hasn't. It may just be different than it used to be. Different does not mean it's impossible. It just means thoughtful decisions matter more now. So if you've been wondering whether this might still be a good time for you to make a move right here in Volusia County, let's start by getting clarity. That's it. No pressure, no giant commitment, no dramatic next step, just clarity. If you want help thinking through what that could look like for your home, your timing, your next chapter, reach out, send us a message, give us a call or text. We're happy to help you look at it in a simple, honest, no pressure way. And hey, if this kind of content is helpful, make sure you subscribe and like, please, because I'm going to keep making videos just like this to help homeowners make smart, low stress decisions in today's market.